Jeff Ritzman, welcome to our show, Paratopia.
Thank you, Jerry. It's great to be here.
Wait a minute, what? I know I didn't just hear that. So, we've been teasing that this week's episode is a dynamic duo show. That means just you and me, and that
Right.
we have something that is both amazing and, as you would say, kind of silly at the same time.
Yeah, that would be correct.
By way of, trickster thing. It's like, oh, look at all this amazing information we have. Ooh, look at how we're going to change the direction of the way we think. But the caveat is, you gotta trust the source.
Right.
And that's a bit of a leap of a faith. But
yes.
Anyway, we will go down this road because I feel like the information...
You want to.
Well, because we want to, and because I feel like the information is interesting enough that it, ultimately, does the source matter? Can you make lemonade out of that lemon?
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, why don't you sort of take it from here? Maybe we'll just tell people we're gonna do this in 3 parts. You've got something to read that you're gonna give the backstory to, and then we'll come back and talk more about it, and then come back and talk even more about it. So why don't you tell us all what the hell I'm babbling about?
Well, this has to do with the gentleman in the black shroud. And I'd say, now, what was this, Jeremy? Was this 2 episodes ago, or 3, was it?
It was the Ouija board special.
Yeah, right before that. It was that week. And I'm sorry, folks, I still have a bit of a cold, which is getting better, by the way.
Yeah, how's that cold?
It was brutal last night, I will say that.
How insensitive of me.
Yeah. Well, anyway, right before we did the Ouija board interview, I saw my guy, and it's a little odder than usual. I'll put it to you that way. I mean, if standing on a fence wasn't unusual enough, this is even more so, because unlike every other time that I've seen him, I don't remember how it started. I just don't. I don't have an excuse for that. What I remember is I vaguely remember coming down the stairs in a rush. And I remember going into the kitchen, and in the kitchen is a small box with some, I don't know, like Post-it note sized pieces of paper that Lisa had brought home from work. And I was gathering up a bunch of them and then rifling for a pen. I knew he was here. I knew that he was here. I knew that I was supposed to write something down, but I don't remember being awakened. I don't remember how he showed up or anything like that. What I remember is what I just said. And so I go out to the living room and I sit on the floor, and we do the whole routine of, which is every routine, which is, stand up, walk around me, sit down, cross leg, knees touching, that sort of thing. And then I grab the paper from behind me on the table.
What's he doing when he's walking around you?
I don't know.
How many times does he walk around you?
5.
Is he doing gestures or anything?
I don't look up.
Huh. Well, you can see his shroud rifling, right?
I can see it, moving, yeah.
Huh.
But it's not broad steps. They're kind of small, and it's not like he's scuttling or anything, but it's just, like a very slow, almost like a wedding walk, that type of thing, going down the aisle, that sort of walk. That's what it might remind you of. And so I immediately turn around and I grab the pen and the paper and I look at it, and his head is down. And I have to preface this by saying that I got the feeling there was not a lot of time for him to be there. And so it was kind of rushed. And so I was supposed to write these things down, this something that I've gotten. And so I always said if I ever got anything of really big importance, I would share it. And so here it is. And I mean, it feels important to me. It's kind of changed the way I think about stuff. in sort of ways, kind of how I how I view the phenomena that we're studying about, or that you're here for to hear about. And so, this is what I wrote down. But again, let's kind of reiterate what Jeremy said, that this is from this person, this it. So I'm going to go ahead and read this so we can get it out of the way.
Well, I'm going to just preface it with two little notes that might be helpful.
Sure.
One is he references Horton, which is from Horton Hears a Who.
That's right.
And the other is he talks about the things between things.
Right.
And this is actually one of the initial, eureka moments between me and Jeff when we first met, where it was like, wow, you too? When we were, well, younger. I mean, growing up, we always wondered what, and we've talked about this on the show, we've always wondered what the stuff between objects is.
Yeah.
And so he talked a little bit about that.
If you could stick your finger between this, that's where they are, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so those are the two things that come up that he's referencing that might not have a reference point.
Right. I do want to say one thing is that I had to write this very quickly, and I'm fairly sure that I got it verbatim, but some of the words were very hard to read the next morning, and only a couple of the words that really don't affect the overall did I guess at. And they were kind of words like because and exists and stuff like that. So it wasn't anything too terrible, but I could tell by the shape of what I'd written I thought it was. And so it seems to make sense in context. So just wanted to throw that out there. And so here it is. We, meaning Earth and people, are smaller than the smallest measurement that mankind is capable of measuring. This is in comparison to the larger perspective, which has no known end and is self-perpetuating. The fractal is the single greatest discovery of man. The answers from the artist to the scientist are there. Mankind will never be able to see with technology what the microsubatomic particles are, because what exists there is another universe, infinitesimally small, and likely a replication of our current sense to reality, i.e., meaning space, people, technology, etc. We too live within, to our own perspective, a larger version of a particle world. To back out from Earth to the end of reality itself without human perception is the trick. There is currently no ability to do this. Your reality, that includes infinite space, is contained within a single particle. Everything you know or can perceive, and we've seen only the smallest portion of that, is within that single particle. There are other particles. There are within those particles other intelligences unimaginable to you. The reality of those particles, too, is imperceptible to you within your physical body. Time. Time is perceptual and is governed only by perception. If your world had no inhabitants, time would become irrelevant. If your world had no inhabitants to exist on it, your world would not exist at all. Nor would your perceptible vision of the cosmos. It would all simply, instantly cease to exist. Your science has already made note of quantum particles that come in and out of existence instantly and constantly. Within those particles are worlds, intelligence, and all live their history in the wink of your eye. To those within these particles of reality, their time is long, seemingly billions of your years. You see their birth, life, and transcendence in nanoseconds. To you, it's just a strange particle with little explanation that comes into your reality and leaves just as quickly. Now scale that up. You too are within a particle that will one day simply cease and will wink out of existence. You and all other intelligence will long have left this perception of reality, so not to worry. The question is, where have all these intelligence gone to? This is as of yet unknown to me. I know what you're thinking, and yes, there is someone looking at our particle, but there is someone else looking at his particle, and so on. Now take this straight line of the fractal model and expand it to parallels. These two exist in the same framework as described. However, they are echoes of other realities. The question is, which one is the source of the echo? What you have heard is true in a sense. Every molecule is a yawning chasm to another world. Now, where he got that was, I listened to Terence McKenna, and that's a saying that Terence has said a couple of times that I've heard. He goes on to say, if you desire contact, you do well to take a lesson from Horton. Listen to the smallest particle, not the vastness of your perceived cosmos. I am not from outside your existence. I've come from a particle in your world, one older and more complex than your science has even thought exists. In a strange sense, you've already known this when you theorize they exist in the space between space. In a certain sense, this is true, but we are beginning to question what this space actually is. And that's where it ends. And so, I've written a couple of notes, and there's a couple of things on the homepage right now that I just want you to look at, because I think it's inspiring imagery to me, at least. And I don't make any bones about saying that, and to quote Terence again, for my money, these statements come from an unsanctioned reality. And so therefore, even though they're coming from me, I have a certain amount of uncomfortableness about it because, in my opinion, they're part of the enigmatic other. And with that said, I wonder and I question whether they can be fully trusted or whether they're simply like another nudge at a thought experiment to go somewhere else. But I do want to mention that it was kind of related to me in a way that the pretense of the overall thing that I wrote down, the pretense was that it was very basic and very simplistic. And so, on one hand, I hesitate to read too deep into it, but on the other hand, it's something that I can talk about that doesn't involve me personally, and it's not all of my personal business. So, but like I said earlier, it does kind of give me thoughts upon the paranormal and the different view of reality based upon the fractal geometry.
Well, let's take a break here.
Okay.
People can use this as a place marker to re-listen to that if they want. And we'll come back and we will discuss further.
Hi, I'm Dennis McKenna, and you're listening to Jeff and Jeremy on Paratopia.
And we're back. So what else do we need to know about this conversation?
Well,
what surrounded this? I mean, he didn't just say, okay, go get a pen and paper, take dictation, and that's
well,
it.
I don't know. I don't know how it started because, like I said, I was rifling for pen and paper. So I'm guessing that at some point I was supposed to write this down. And after the opening ceremonies of walking around me and, sitting and all that, then that was the point where I turned around immediately to get this paper and set it on my knee. So I'm writing on my knee the whole time, which was a lot of fun to try and do. I mean, aside from that, there was no real pretense to anything.
Well, he said afterwards he mentioned something about the CERN collider.
Well, that was after everything. I mean, I think the first things I said was, "Well, is this something to be shared?" And he said that I was able to share it with you and with one other. And I said, "Well, who's that?" And I have to be honest with you and say, the first person that shot to mind was Tyler, Tyler Coachon. And but then that all of a sudden that didn't seem like the right thing. And he said, "You'll know immediately who it is." I said, "Okay, great." So I just assumed either I didn't know them or I was just going to come by happenstance by someone that this was going to feel right to say to. So, and yeah, the CERN collider came up, and it was referred to as a necessary part of science and all of that and understanding, but that it was diabolical. I think it just comes down to that notion of not knowing what you're doing. Not knowing, only seeing a very small part of the picture, and you're conducting experiments like this, and you don't really know what these particles represent. You're just studying them because you need to know more. And ultimately, I think that that the overall tone was it has to happen, but It didn't exactly set well. But that it was a necessary part of science. It
What
was
are
a
they doing?
necessary
Are they
part of our learning.
destroying? Are they destroying universes?
By the thousands.
Well, is that
Apparently.
any different than a volcano?
I don't know. I guess not. I don't know. I mean, like, that wasn't a great deal of the topic. It was just kind of like a sidebar thing because, I asked. I asked because that's the thing that's been in the forefront of, particles, study. And, and initially it was like kind of, you could tell it was somewhat of a, like someone might view the Holocaust, like that type of error. But then it was, unfortunately, this is the only way science is going to learn about these things, and it has to happen. So it is what it is, and it is the way it's supposed to be, and this is how things go along, But ultimately, it didn't seem to set too terribly well. So that was that. I mean, to go back to what was said again, what I kind of personally got out of it kind of was, I've talked about the more you give, the more you get. The phenomenon responding to focus and intent and all of that. And that later led me into like the feedback loop theory, that the manifestations feedback upon your own thoughts and focus. The loop goes back and forth like an echo till it ultimately reaches a state that resembles an abstract manifestation of your original thought. And perhaps a combination of both sides doing input. So in effect, that's communication, whether it's intentional or it's not. But ultimately, that's fractal. That is fractal, the back and forth. The feedback loop theory would be a fractal theory, if you step back and look at it. The question is, our countless universes that are surrounding us, if you buy into this statement, being affected by our thoughts. And so you've heard the notion that there's no original thoughts, but at the same time, you've got these sudden inspirations that are coming from somewhere, or they feel like they're coming from somewhere else, or something else. So I question often, could it be from subatomic worlds, if you buy that surround us? Could we be inspiring them, which leads to focus of intent on grander scales, et cetera, et cetera. And as far as, things like flying saucers and aliens and all of these things that people see or experience, are those manifestations when they are so physical, as Whitley talked about on Dreamland this week, the real physical encounters at the cabin. Let me smell you. What are you made of? That sort of thing. And we laugh and we joke about that sometimes, but ultimately, it's to qualify the tangibility of the entire experience. So when it's that real, are the manifestations made of these particles that apparently are self-aware and cognizant of other particles? And so is that like some kind of massive or attained oneness structures moving together in harmony to a bigger purpose? And that, of course, would say, why is there no solid proof? It's there, but it dissipates into other forms. It becomes the ground, the dirt, the trees, the air, etc. Is the flying saucer made of air and trees and earth and so on? I mean, when he said, if your world had no inhabitants to exist on it, your world wouldn't exist. That to me is more than what it sounds like. And again, I don't want to read a ton into this, but to me, it's not so much like if a tree falls, etc. It seemed completely literal to me. If we were not here to perceive this earth and the space around us, it would not be there. Our place here and all we can perceive that's out there becomes like a recurring hole in the fractal pattern that's always changing. I've always thought that space as we know it is not infinite, that space's size and mass is kind of dictated by our ability to perceive further away from us. And if there are other cultures out there that are, either primitive to us or likely more exotic than us, then they too are going to have an effect to expanding the universe, expanding the cosmos outward. I don't think we'll ever see what is beyond space in a technological sense. I don't think we're going to ever see that. It'll just simply unfold as we get further and further out, or we're able to see further and further out and go further and further out.
I mean, is this why space is curved? Are we talking about quite literally, we live in a bubble?
Yeah. I mean, that if I had to make my guess, I'd say either that or it looks like lint, a piece of lint. Take a white, piece of lint and put it on a black piece of paper, or vice versa.
Well, this gets into actually one thing you had said is that there were visuals that go along with this. It's not just that you're taking dictation.
Right.
So why don't you tell us about that one?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of them are. I mean, it comes really fast, and I think I've already said this. So I don't think I'm out of line in saying that. Just about, well, it was the first time that I ever encountered this guy. He started talking about the cosmos, and it was just a mass of numbers and equations and all of this. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't understand any of that. You're going to have to do pictures or something. I felt like a kindergartner, like, show me just the pictures, Mom. As I'm kind of writing this down, I'm seeing the stuff that is clearly not something I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how fast can I get this down so that I don't get, smacked around or God knows what. I mean, who knows? I mean, you just, with this stuff, you never know what it's going to do from 1 minute to the next. And I want to get everything down that I can. And so, I did get this nothingness and seeing, I guess what looked like a fuzzy ball or a fuzzy form. And that was everything. There was everything. That was it all. But that out from that, apart from that, there were other fuzzy little members that were everywhere, sprinkled across absolute nothingness. And they were expanding. And so I look at that and I go, I don't think this is a big bang that is some, kind of, explosion of some sorts that it's always expanding into nothingness. It's kind of dictated by perception. When nothingness is perceived, it can't be perceived. It always will become more space. So everything is expanding, and that ties into a whole bunch of other stuff that, excuse me, that we're probably going to have to skip in this episode because it goes way back in my history for stuff. But
well, I was talking about even the drawing table. You sitting at a drawing table.
Yeah, you're sitting at a drawing table, and you're drawing a guy sitting at a drawing table, and it backs up from there and off the earth, and past that, it's another guy drawing. I mean, it's that complete loop. It's that complete cycle. It's like an MC Escher drawing. That's what it puts you in mind of. If you pull out far enough from here, you end up out of here, and then you're looking at something else looking at you, and then past that, it's like, is there a God? Yeah, there's a God, but is somebody watching him? Yes. Is someone watching that one? Yes. That's sort of what it puts you in mind of. Is that true? I don't have a clue. It certainly feels like there's something in there, that's like absolutely making my brain have a rash. It's just that kind of feeling, it's like I can't get my head out of those thoughts now. And you see this everywhere. I mean, I was telling Jeremy that it just doesn't apply to like holding up a rock next to a mountain and going, look how similar they look. It's so much more than that. It's like, you see a city and then you look at the street, and the street looks like, veins and a bloodstream, and this is all feeding the city, and the city is this being that is alive, and we're all living on it. So it's like a fractal abstract manifestation of us. And take that down to an anthill. It's the same thing. It all works in the same way. Everything is repetitive. I mean, but as far as like, back to what I was saying about space and size and mass is, all being dictated by our ability to perceive more of it. And I know that, science says often, there's a galaxy 100 light years away and billions of years older than our own and all of that. And that's not to say that that's not right, but the age and the time and all of that, that's totally a human perception. And manifestation can be anything we think and more. So it's like, you want a new star? No problem. You wanted a trillion-year-old galaxy? No problem. It's there. Maybe it's more than you see what you expect to see. I've talked about that a lot on this show about how you perceive paranormal events. And, I always say, well, maybe it's a cultural filter and you see what you're expected, what you expect to see. But I think there's more to it than that, and that maybe there's also some collective consciousness and maybe external consciousness that is throwing in static over top of that. And that's what ultimately becomes what is. So with if our galaxy winked out of existence, it's just, it's a hole in a tendril of a fractal. And that fractal then gains a new tendril as things spiral out. And it's consciousness creating complexity, and it's likely creating more consciousness. So it's making more of everything. Now, how do you go into UFO ground with this? A lot of sightings every year are things that I think probably MUFON and a lot of other people would classify as like a drone or a probe, because they're not big enough to house anything. I mean, they're small. We've seen stuff like that in Mexico City and Gulf Breeze and I'm sure in Pine Bush and the places we talked about on the live show this week past. And they're all, it's because they're small. There must be a probe of some sort. And so small, looking at it from this standpoint that I've spoken about here, is kind of irrelevant to what, if anything, is inside a small probe-like object. It just doesn't matter. That doesn't mean you can take the leap that there are thousands of people inside of a basketball-shaped object in the air, but clearly we can't count that out anymore. I mean, if these beings or other consciousnesses are here and they're manifested, then they've conquered matter and particle manipulation. I mean, that if you're going off, and again, I'm playing off what was just read, or maybe it's natural to them. Maybe it wasn't anything they had to conquer. Maybe it's just this is the natural way for them. So passing through walls, which you've heard, and disappearing and that sort of thing, none of that would be very difficult to do if you could control particle manipulation. That's a joke. And, to go deeper into the fractal angle, looking at aliens and UFOs and all of that, I feel like something that feels right to me is that they're made of nothing. They're physical when they want to be, but there's nothing inside. They're like puppets. This is the other side of the coin for me. This is how I flip back and forth. But the ones who are pulling the strings aren't there. We're seeing like an avatar that is just made of nothing. And so are these particle universes that exist between space and in the tree outside your window and the carpet underneath your feet, is all of that stuff alive? So ultimately, my answer to that is yes. And for lack of a better way to put it, I've kind of always felt that way. Like, you could be alone in a room, but you're not really alone. There are things there, and it's more than ghosts and spirits and aliens watching us and all of that. This is even more grand than that. This is every particle being, like Terrence said, a yawning chasm to another universe. And so what does that mean when you really think about it? So before we get too long into this, I wanted you guys to take a look at the homepage, because there's two little items on there for you. And the one on top is the big orange fractal that you'll see that looks kind of like a laid over figure 8. And I've circled in green there the repetitive design, which, if you cock your head kind of to the right, it looks almost like somebody yawning, which is ironic. And looks to be made up of little bubbles, and it's kind of got a Y inside that kind of splits the eye sockets and the mouth opened up and all of that. So you've got that thing that seems to be repeated all through this. And if you squint hard enough, you'll see even between the large formations of that, you have smaller ones. And so everybody take your mouse and just click on that image one time. And what you're going to get is we're going to zoom into the center. And so now we're looking at this a little deeper in. And if you look over there to the left, you can see we're being followed, because that same little guy, that yawning face, is kind of upside down on his noggin. And this is, again, you could look anywhere in this and find that same repetitive pattern over and over and over. So if you go back and think about that first frame that we just looked at, imagine that as us. that form that I have circled represents our universe, our, our part. And so if you click that image yet again, we're going to go further into the center. And now we're really deep into the middle, which again, circled is our fellow Yawning boy again. And he's surrounded by more of himself over and over and over. Click yet again. And now we're way past the center. We're deep into the black. And once again, you can see our yawning face is represented everywhere. Now, the area that's circled in green is kind of one of the deep, it's all deep in the sense that I could zoom into any given spot on this fractal that we're looking at right now and go as deep in as you want until the computer just can't do anymore. But we're going to dive into this center part where you see that little dark mass in the center of that green circle. So click one more time. And now we're looking really deep into that original image. And again, our yawning guy is very large. And you can see that parted in the center of the dark area is something that doesn't look too dissimilar from what we started with. And so click one more time. And we're looking at kind of a little bit different, but yet still the same pattern, a different layout, but not horribly, horribly different from what we started out with. Now, that circled green area there that you see on the lower left, that's where we're going next. And I'm going to push it so far down in there that I simply can't render anymore on this machine. So if you click it one more time, there ends up our yawning guy. And so who's that? When you think about reality being a fractal type design, if we are the thing we started out with that's circled, who's in there? Is it more of us? Are we repeated? Do things, in fractal things mutate? You can have mutations in the fractal pattern. And so is it some skewed sense of us? Is it you hear people talk about time travelers and that sort of thing, and they're coming to fix something that's gone awry, and then they're mutated. Maybe it's not that. Maybe that what you're seeing is some kind of mutated fractal being that's coming from some, tandem reality or concentric circled reality or spiraled reality. Who knows? And then the second image down below, that's it for the top one. And the bottom one, you'll see it's a black box with the Paratopia logo on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry. And so if you click that, it's going to start to cycle a different fractal. And so we all know that this is just a mathematical, equation that has made this thing. And we know that it's a mathematical equation that makes the colors cycle. But I think it's an interesting representation of how the bigger picture can influence the smallest, because that light that you see erupting from the two large black masses there, and then seems to be going down into the center. The thing you have to remember about that center is that, ladies and gents, that is infinity. There is no end to that. There's an end when you look up in the air. There is no end to this. And so you have to wonder, when we think thoughts, when we focus thoughts, when we do all that, and we send out this boosh of, brainwave activity, how far does it go? Is it going into forever? Is it being added to and sent back? Is it, this is the stuff that this has really kind of inspired me to think about. Is Lee used to tell me years ago, and I thought it was kind of weird at the time that he said it, but he says, thoughts are things. And so what is our perceptions and our hopes and our, obsessions and all of that, collectively, what can they do? What can they do from a single person? And so if you look at this, this beautiful swirling color thing as kind of your own personal universe, you could see it just as easily as being your brain that is, sending out waves that are then going on for eternity into who knows where, and being assimilated or being recognized by who knows what. I just thought it was an interesting representation to think about and kind of ponder. I don't have any great answer for it. It's just I've played with fractals for years, so I made these two things up, and it just seems that it seems amazing to me to think that colored pattern is going as deep as the computer can conjecture. But if this were a real fractal uh, that didn't rely on a computer to manifest itself like this this burst of color would then, or this wave of energy would be going forever and ever and ever into that chasm or out into that forever. I mean, it just never ends. But we can kind of X out of those. And thanks to my wife for coding those into the homepage, because I didn't have a clue how to do that. So, I mean, for me, it came down in the end that not listening to the stars, but listening to particles, I found really interesting. And I did ask, are we ever going to meet anyone from out there? I mean, because, essentially it's like you're wasting your time looking out there. Look in here, look down here. It's at your feet, And the answer to that was, well, possibly, but don't be surprised if it's you. And that kind of struck me funny, because that then plays like a whole scenario in my head of somebody. I mean, hopefully, if this inspires a scientist or inspires, I don't know, government work into studying this stuff, great. I mean, but what if we listen to a particle one day and we hear static, and you remove that static and what you hear is an echo of yourself talking? I mean, is that going to be too weird? Is it the mirror that's turned on itself and you see multiple reflected patterns that go on and on and on and on and never seem to stop? I mean, same thing. I haven't had a great deal of time to like ponder all this stuff. I've been sick this week and busy at work. I'd like to be able to expound more on it, but I'm still kind of thinking about it. I'm still pondering it, and unfortunately, I have to say this. I haven't even told Jeremy this, so this will be the first time he hears it too. I don't think there's going to be any more of this sort of thing. I don't think we're going to get a higher education in this. I think this is it. That's not to say I'm not going to see this guy again, or there isn't going to be something else, but I think as far as this thread of thought, I think this is all we're going to get. I just have that feeling. I could be totally wrong, but I'm going to throw it out there and say, I think this is it. So, Jerry, you want to give me your thoughts here? Or
well,
what?
I'll give my thoughts in a bit. I just wanted to say what? Oh, one of the things that you had said before was that you had asked this guy about, are we ever going to meet people from, outer space?
Right.
And his answer was, maybe, but don't be surprised if they're you.
Right.
Now, does that mean people from other planets? Does that mean people from other particles?
I got the sense that it was from further out than that. I got the sense that it might have been from a tandem piece of lint on the bedspread of nothingness. That's what I thought. That's what springs to mind for me.
So that it's possible to meet humans from other parallel Earths? Because what I'm picturing when you're talking about all this is you've got this horizontal plane,
right,
which is parallel this universe.
Right.
All these sorts of, possibilities of other universes. And then
right,
you pull back from that and you've got a completely separate but equal universe of things, or, planet of beings or whatever, looking
right,
at that.
right,
that particle or that string of particles exists within the universe of another completely different consciousness, let's say.
Gotcha.
Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
I don't think that would be out of the realm. I mean, not everything's on the table for me at this point.
I mean,
yeah.
is that what you're picturing? Is that
that's more or less, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So in that frame, are we saying then that the people that would be, don't be surprised if it's you, does that mean we're going to meet people from parallel universes along our string?
I can tell you how I visually picture this, and maybe at some point over the weekend I can put a fractal design and maybe show you what I mean by this. When we were looking at that first image with the mask that looks like it's yawning, if you mutate that fractal, if you change one number, I don't know what's changing the numbers, okay? But you can mutate these things. to where two of the faces that are identical to each other, they slam together. And when they start to come together, they almost looks like a water kiss. It looks like when you've got two pieces or two droplets of water, how they will be attracted to each other, the wet objects. And I almost look at the lint spread across on this bed of nothingness as being the larger points of the mask that we were looking at, the yawning face. What if those are all, I don't remember them all looking the same, but they may have been. I just don't remember that. But what if they were connected by some kind of fractal pattern in some way that was relatively useless for space travel or anything like that? Or what if that is the black hole? If the black hole leads somewhere, what if it is the compacted fractal that leads to the next larger fractal pattern that is identical to our own? So if that mutates, if that collapses, if it gains a new number, if it gains more complexity, and that opens up and the two tend to collide or they mesh together in some way, then would become face to face with ourselves. How catastrophic would that be, or how great would that be? That's kind of how I viewed that, to be honest with you. That's how I saw that. I don't know that that's ever a possibility, but that's how that has been my inner thoughts since this happened. It's kind of that kind of like a collision of sorts, not a bad thing, just a completely natural thing based on the fractal geometry.
Do you think it's possible that we could have accidentally, or somebody in some other universe could have accidentally destroyed the original source?
Yeah.
And that's why they can't find it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at it this way. If we are yawning face number 1 and they're in yawning face number 9, we're all the same. We're all the same thing. We're all in these parallels. And, you know, the big thing in ufology has been, you know, the atomic weapon and the nukes and all of that sort of thing, and how these things are bad and so on and so forth. And I've thought for a long time, like, you know, it's more than that. It's more than taking care of the planet. This is about, you know, molecular disruption of some sort that can rip things. And ultimately, what does that mean for parallel universes? What does that mean for fractal number 9 if we on fractal number 2 explode a weapon that causes our fractal to become irregular? There can't be irregularity. It's going to happen in all of them. And so what we do here affects more than us. It affects all of these other tandem realities. So if one goes down the shitter, you know,
right?
You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
I mean, we're small in comparison to the bigger picture here. I mean, we're probably not as big as the yawning face. We're probably a dot or a speck in that yawning face, but it has to start somewhere. And so why would these things care what we do here? This is our corner of the universe. Who gives a fuck what we do here? Well, guess what, buddy? I give a fuck, because if you fuck this up, you're fucking me up. You know, I really used to get irritated when people would say that they really care about us. And now I think this is more like self-preservation than caring about anybody. I think this is, you know, they've never destroyed us either. Like, if you want to take the sci-fi bend here, they've never destroyed us either, when they easily could have. With all the displayed technology, they could wipe this planet, they could glass this planet clean, and that would be fine, and everything would go away and problem solved. That's not going to happen, because they can't do that, because they are us. You know, this, I mean, I smiled to myself because I said, well, this goes into Jeremy's oneness thing, everything being the same, everything being one. And it's true in that sense to me. I can't get my head around every conceptual thing that you have for that, or every knowing that you have about that, but that makes sense to me. Like that, I can get my brain around. And so everything is mutating, everything is growing and expanding and feeding off itself, I guess is the way to put it. But obviously someone has found a way to get from particle, you know, X229 or whatever to where we are, because this guy in black is there. I mean, what does that mean? Why, this goes into my bigger questions, which is why the tortured youth, why the fear, why all of that? Is it all being able to perceive the loop, the feedback loop? Is it a conditioning process to be able to perceive what is all around us, and then once it gains your attention, like I said before, you can't look away. You recognize it, and then at a certain point in your life, I guess it talks to you. That's the best way I could put it.
Let me ask you this. I mean, the guy, you had said before that you thought maybe he was dead, or you thought maybe he never existed in the first place.
Right.
And both of those feelings are probably similar, and they both probably apply, right? It's because you felt them.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's because, I mean, here's one scary sci-fi thought. I wonder if we feel that way to them. I wonder if all of us feel this way because we're of the echo. In a sense, in a very real sense, we are all ghosts. We are all dead.
Do you remember how I told you that you couldn't lie to him?
Uh-huh.
Now do you understand why you can't?
No.
Because he knows. He already knows.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that in any grandiose ESP sense. I mean, he knows. He knows because it's all repeating. You can't,
Right.
I mean, you can't not know. I mean, I hate to say it this way, but you can't not know yourself. You know who you are. And that's always been kind of the tone of the more personal discussions that deal with me alone, has been, what you are. What is this? What is this nonsense? What is this double talk? Say what you are. And okay, I'm angry. Okay, I'm I'm a jealous person in some points, and I'm joyful, and I'm artistic in some sense, and so on and so forth. So all of that, this is things that he already knew because it's all a repetitive cycle. My code exists somewhere else, apparently. All of our codes exist somewhere else. Doing the same thing exactly, I don't know.
Permutations. It would be permutations of the
right.
same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
let's take break number 2 here, and we'll come back and I'll give some of my spiel on this, and I think it will apply more to ufology, which is sort of the direction we're going.
Okay.
This has been the ending of Lost.
Yes. You're left with nothing. That's right.
Paratopia, Jeremy Vaeni here, and besides this completely free Happy Holidays super duper important episode of Paratopia, I am giving away my Happy Holidays super important book Urgency for a mere, get this, holiday shoppers, or whatever. I'm trying to sell something here, folks. Go with me. 99 cents. Dun dun dun. Urgency is now 99 cents on the Kindle and on the Nook. So if you want it on the Nook, head on over to barnesandnoble.com, and if you want it on the Kindle, head on over to amazon.com, or the Amazon equivalent in France, Germany, and the UK. It's also available in paperback at the regular price, but for just 99 cents, under $1, under $1, less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can own this thing on your favorite e-reader. Thanks for considering, and on with the show. Okay, this begins the Veiny Ish portion of the program, so I hope you marked your chapter there. This is chapter 3. I guess I want to start by saying I think one thing that we forgot to mention before is that the other person who you were allowed to tell this to was my friend Tracy, from the Ouija board episode.
That's right.
That was the person you felt the need to tell.
That we hung up on her and then called her back.
we hung up on her, and then Jeff was like, I think it's her. I think it's her. We need to call her back. I was saying, well, why don't we call her back? And why don't you just tell her what you just told me? Because essentially, we taped the Ouija board episode, then Jeff told me this story, and then was saying, and I think she's the other person, and then I was like, well, call her back. One of the things that you mentioned in that conversation, and if you want, maybe we can play it on Sunday or something. If you
okay,
instead of recapping all this, we could just play that. But one of the things that you'd mentioned that's, I think, important for ufology, and another eureka moment to me, was you had retold a story that I think you've told on the show about a man with great credentials in your eyes who claimed to be a photographer who was taken out to some mysterious airbase, lowered inside of a UFO that was small in comparison to the hangar that it was in.
Correct.
He was told that he would feel some sort of distorting effects that might kind of make him sick.
Right.
He was lowered in on this harness, and when he looked around inside, it was bigger than the hangar.
That's
by
correct.
far.
Yeah.
And
By
the
a
hangar
long way,
was already, like football stadium size.
Yeah.
So how is that possible? And then you go on to sort of give the eureka moment of, maybe these little things that people think are just probes or lights in the sky.
Right.
Maybe those aren't probes. We have no idea what's on the inside of those.
No,
we have
we
no
don't.
idea how big the expanse is inside there.
Right.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah,
to me, that's like, there you go. There's your other... There's answer number 2 to what the hell is that in the sky,
Right, yeah. Size doesn't mean anything. I mean, looking into this, that just doesn't hold sway anymore. Just thinking that's just a mechanized probe or a robot of some sort or, something like that. That could be a lot bigger than your perception allows you to get. Size doesn't mean anything anymore.
Maybe we'll have Tracy on Sunday. If I can get Tracy on Sunday, maybe we'll have her to see what her point of view is. I did email her a couple of days ago and asked her, does she know why she was asked to, or, why she was the other person chosen to hear this stuff initially. And I didn't get a real clear answer. So maybe she can give that to us. I don't know. It is a holiday weekend.
Right.
But here was another big aha moment for me in all of this, and so now I'm going to read to you chapter 54 of my book, I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land. Reading day here on Paratopia. So this is chapter 54, and this just has, I don't know, a new meaning for me now. It starts off 7/7/2000, 2:30 a.m. Have this dream where I discover I have the ability to levitate. Did this at a bookshop. I thought Bob and Chris, my roommates, were watching me through a two-way security mirror because afterwards we talked through an intercom. Turns out security had notified them of my performance and made them watch the footage. I felt certain they were watching me do it live, but they told me otherwise. I made my levitation act look like demonic possession. I wasn't sure that it wasn't. Cut to, this is all in the dream, cut to, in Mom's bedroom back home in Taunton. I performed this levitation thing for her and the amazing Randy. I'm forcing Randy to accept my ability to levitate, no strings attached. I then do this for friends and other people in various settings. Cut to, underneath bed with Mike in my bedroom in Taunton. Mike shows up earlier in the book as Plant Man. So I'm underneath bed with Mike in my bedroom in Taunton. He looks upset. I ask him what's wrong. He asks me why I have to do something to be special, to stand out. I tell him something to the effect of, it's an innate gift and I should share it with the world. Somewhere in there, I recognize that this is a dream. I seize the opportunity to question my unconscious mind in the form of Mike about my alleged abductions. I say, don't you even want to know what happened? This is our chance to find out what's going on. And this is a common theme. Whenever I woke up into a dream for like the last 10 years, I would ask these dream characters, am I really an abductee? That sort of thing. So here I am doing that again in this dream. He, Mike, is silent. I look him in the eye and demand straight up, tell me what's going on. Was I abducted by aliens? Mike's voice turns angry, beyond angry, demonic. He grabs me and plunges my upper torso through the corner where floor and wall meet. Since you want to know so badly. He says this, and then I'm in a black and gray nether region. I'm scared out of my mind. I almost turn back, certain this is an abduction, but at the last second I forge onward, plunging wholly into the nondescript dimension. Responding to my unspoken suspicion that this is an abduction, Demonic Mike says, to find that out, you have to find what time they come for your sister. That statement scares me to my core. I want out. I know this is real and they're in control and I'm out of my mind with fright. I swim and claw and flail back through the portal to my bedroom. I wake up from this nightmare in my bed in Taunton. It is pitch black, blacker. Some Beatles tune, I don't remember what, is playing on the radio across the room. It takes every ounce of concentrated effort to move out of bed, but I do. I turn off the radio and dash through the kitchen to my mom's room. I bump into something in the dark. She asks me if I'm okay, and I say yes, and I tell her I didn't mean to wake her. I tell her what happened, how I had this bad dream. Her words are soothing, loving. I wake up again, same spot. In fact, I quote-unquote wake up and run into my mother's arms over a dozen times, acting in a multitude of settings, each time telling her of the last. Her response is totally different every time. In one instance, we were upper crust types, and I had a blonde baby sister. I realize, finally, that I'm not waking up at all, but I'm being shown / participating in being shown the various responses of Marys to Jeremys and alternate versions of our world. I know I'm not waking from this nightmare. The next time I wake up, I don't run. I yell, "Ma?" She yells back, "Yeah? Can you come in here for a minute?" "Yeah," she replies groggily. I hear rustling out there beyond my bedroom door, but she isn't coming fast enough. I yell, "Ma, can you come here?" "Just a sec," she replies. I feel bad waking her, but lying in my bed in the dark, feeling their presence is simply too much. She doesn't show. I suspect I'm still in a nightmare. I keep yelling, "Ma, Ma, can you help me, Ma?" My voice transforms into something distorted, almost like Mike's satanic impression. Meanwhile, back in materiality, I somehow muster the strength to wake up for real. I still feel their presence. My lack of faith in being awake, even as I write these words, is disturbing. Your lack of faith is disturbing. I am shocked and scared to go back to sleep. Something about this and that line about my sister is making me cry and shiver. It's like I know now it's all true. And I can't handle the truth the way I thought I would be able to, although it is worth noting that I faced my fears by plunging into that other dimension to find the truth. In doing so, I thought I might gain a little ground on them, perhaps be more cognizant and in control. They would never let this be. Cowardice, or just not in their best interest. I've never felt this much negativity toward these beings. I'm still crying and shaken. I don't want to sleep. And then I say, as a footnote, when I finally woke for real in my Manhattan apartment, I bolted into the kitchen and paced back and forth like a caged animal. I was out of my mind with fear so raw and real it is beyond words. I paced there, staring at my bedroom door, muttering, "Fuck you," to myself. Let's be clear, this was not a dream. Perhaps the most important aspect of this whole experience, which I was too tired and insane to jot down at the time, is incomprehensible. The black/gray amorphous space was actually a room. I had to mentally fight through the amorphous illusion to see what was there. Me. On what appeared to be an operating table, surrounded by gray dwarves wearing hooded tunics. This image bled through the remaining quote-unquote dream sequences. That is the truth. That's what happened. It was not a lucid dream or sleep paralysis or any of that interpretive junk. But logically, I could not have been on a table in some room. Logically, I could not have been anywhere other than my own bedroom. And then it goes on into some other stuff. So that is the first, what I've always considered to be the first alien abduction where I saw them, where I actually saw these beings. So you've got this dream of multiple versions of me, and through the dream, there I am staring, sitting on a table. And so, in abduction literature, we read that this is that they're operating on you, or that they're staring at you and provoking scenarios in you to study your reactions, your behavior, and that sort of thing. Right? We've all heard this in abduction lore, but what if that's not the case? What if this is simply that these beings, whatever these gray beings are in the next vertical universe up. We're a particle in their world. And when they view us, they see all aspects of us. They see our horizontal line of possibilities, our string of interconnected universes. I want to say Earths, but, I don't know how big or small they can look at something in a particle universe. In any event, so maybe that's more of, being on a table, being stared at, and all this, maybe is almost more of a metaphorical scenario for that it's just simply, you pull back one, and there's the gray staring at our universe, staring at us in it, and seeing, just as Jeff said about Mr. Shroudman here, the reason he knows everything is because he's seeing it all. He's seeing it all in one gulp, let's say, like an accordion almost. He's seeing our universes on a string, accordioning out, and so it's all apparent to him. And when we get a sense of that perception, it freaks us out, man. And we try to put it into this abduction box, and maybe it just simply isn't that. It's just simply somebody looking through a microscope, and there we are. Anyway, that's my little epiphany number 1. Does that sound plausible to you?
Yeah, I can tell you how I thought of it.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I have had the thought lately, and it's just a thought. It doesn't mean, I swallow this whole or anything. It's just it's a ponderance, I guess, that I thought to myself, what if there's a lot of this subjective nature in an abduction experience or in any kind of visitation experience? There's sort of this altered state feeling. There's a bizarreness to it that's just beyond bizarre. And I wonder if in fact there are, like you say, these lateral, bilateral universes where there are other you and I's out there. If something bizarre enough is happening to them, or even the mundane is happening to them, is it possible for us to feel that in some way? Because the fractals, let's face it, are connected by something. They're all connected into the interlocking web of a fractal universe. So if you look at it that way, I mean, I'm fascinated with deja vu because all my life I've had deja vu that literally makes me stop and go, "Whew, Jesus." I mean, it's that strong for me. And I've met other people over the years that have been in this field that I've come across who've said exactly the same thing. Like, yeah, my sister gets it, but nothing like I get it. Like, I get disoriented and I get a little woozy from it, and that's how I get. And I had it today for the first time in a very long time. Sitting at my computer screen, I leaned over to look at a web page, and it was unreal. And I wonder, if an extraordinary experience happens in a parallel universe, like contact with the other, and it happens to Jeremy number 5, you being Jeremy number 1, let's say, does that come through to you as I'm not sure if that happened or not? I remember something, but it's so smoky, it's so hazy, I just don't know. Was I dreaming? I mean, you think, well, it's all in my head. Well, yeah, well, it's all in your head anyway. But is that some kind of, I don't know, bifractal reaction to what's going on in some tandem universe? Is that what that is? And vice versa, when its physicality is at you, does it have some kind of shock wave? I guess is the best way to put it. Is there a shock wave if they punch through one and they get Jeremy number 5 and they've got him punched in? Is there a ripple effect that transcends the fractal and bleeds over onto you, and you wake up with this feeling like something has happened? You hear this a lot in abduction stuff. You hear a lot of, it was so dreamlike, but I know I wasn't dreaming. Well, no, you might have been dreaming, but that doesn't mean that what you think happened may not have happened on some, you know, other fractal panel, is the best way to put it. Is there a ripple effect? Is it that sort of thing? Is deja vu? Is that what that is? Fuck what science says about deja vu. I don't buy that brain crap as an explanation for that. I'm sorry, I just don't. And people can contest that with me all they want, but I've had deja vu where I remember when it happened. I can remember the instance where I've dreamed this. Like, I dreamed of being at this certain spot in time, and all of a sudden there I am, and everything is happening, and I can look up and see the bird that I saw in this dream. But was it a dream? There was something else there that it was like I had lived this before. And so I wonder, is that some kind of ripple effect from...
Yeah, I've had that quite a bit. And in fact, over the last few years, I would say, even more than that, I remember it, and I remember, like, I'll have deja vu. And then, just as you said, I'll remember, oh, I know why I had deja vu, because I dreamed it. And when I dreamed it and woke up the next day, I had deja vu from that. And it just keeps sort of like spiraling down, you know what I mean? And then to where I no longer even have further memories of deja vu. It's like deja vu within deja vu within deja vu.
Yeah.
But at some point, maybe let's say 3 deja vus out, I won't have a memory of anything else, but just the feeling that it just keeps going for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is that? How does that fit into the model that we're talking about? I mean, I don't know what would cause a ripple from one reality to the next one.
Well, perhaps we'll figure it out as we go along here.
Let's hope, yes.
I guess just sort of one other point I wanted to make here is this sort of thing makes complete sense of that fear that we've talked about, that deep, God, I think it's Strieber, again, that I'm stealing this from, who, he said they're like insects that they could swallow your soul if they wanted to. You know, it's like, it's that powerful. It's not just that they can kill you, it's that they can absolutely decimate you.
Yeah.
Eat you. Eat your soul. Now, and when you think about that, that sounds evil, right? I mean, what more fearful scenario can there be? But if you look at it from what Jeff has read to you at the beginning of this, well, they can literally decimate this universe. And that's what that fear could be. It's the knowledge that these things could just, poof, kill us out of here. But the fact is that they won't, because they know what we don't, which is all of the interconnectivity issues and all the reasons, not to do that.
Yeah.
But I think there might just be this innate knowing that that's a being that is looking at all aspects of us in this universe through the proverbial microscope, has that godlike power of going pop in their particle accelerator.
And I mean, just because I think visually is the reason for this, but I know I spoke on the show of seeing a being stepping out of a fractal and it looking like this repeating pattern of almost like a movie playing, but skipping backwards and taking the same steps again and again. But then it hit the wall and it was making a noise. It was real. It was of flesh of some sort. It was of matter to be able to impact the wall. But yet this other thing was like a fractal that was an overlay into my own vision that seemed not to be impacting on this physicality that we have alone. And I saw that as a spiral. So there was a tendril coming out of a center and then, pinwheel that all the way around. And so, I wonder, thinking about that, like, first of all, how big are we on the spiral? And where are the others on the spiral? Throughout all this, I mean, we can say, yes, there are parallel universes and permutations of those parallel universes and all that, but where is the other in that? In other words, someone is tiptoeing around the fractal. And so what is that? I got the distinct sense that this guy is not that. I don't get the sense that he can tiptoe into parallels and all of that. I think they can see them. But it almost feels like to me like there's someone else. And here's the weird part is that you and I have talked about all these different races people are seeing and all of this. And we say, well, that's all a cultural filter and that's all this, that, and the other. And maybe that's not right. Maybe people are perceiving these things, whether it's through focus of intent or a cultural filter. I don't doubt that those internal mechanisms in ourselves have an effect on how we perceive this. I don't have a doubt of that. But what if we are seeing many multiples of others, mutated, different, parallel, kind of skipping through these different tendrils of the same fractal? And they know about the bigger fractal. They know about the creative process of how that fractal is increasing its own complexity. Is that the singularity? Is the singularity when the fractals kiss together and we see that happen? We will recognize something. We will realize at that point that there's no more hiding. There's no place to hide anymore. There's somebody else here.
Well,
it's probably us.
It's funny you should bring up the singularity. You hear that? That's my paper. Here's what I got on that. Let me see if I can read my own handwriting.
Okay.
If we become this fundamentally awake or aware as Shroudman is, and can communicate with parallel Earths, would we change them all to reflect this knowledge? Is that the important singularity, where all versions of us line up and stop being infinite discordant echoes? Did Shroudman's people achieve this, or are there versions of his world still ignorant of it? And then the other part is, well, wait a minute. Can we talk to ourselves as described there, or does it not work that way? Do we need an other from another world like Shroudman to talk to us, to make us aware, for the specific purpose of us then communicating with a parallel universe in his reality? Is that how it works? Like fractal dominoes or shoelaces? Is that what relationship is for? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. See, this is again where this, I mean, to me, gets almost into a, like, we wonder why it's so elusive, and we wonder why we can't just know. Like, why can't we just know? And like you and I have said a billion times, is, this thing wants to be elusive. It is what it is. That's how it behaves. And I get the distinct feeling that, a very sardonic joke from my past kind of holds a little bit of real to it, in that, how much can you know before you're affecting the reality in such a profound way that it's altering the fractal pattern? I think right now, what's, like, if you wanted to take a guess as to what is it all about, what is going on, is it someone trying to stabilize the fractal or destabilize it to make it manifest bigger or better or larger or more complex? And I think we can tell just from our daily lives how much more complex life has gotten since, just 1940. I mean, technology is expanding at a rate that is practically building itself. I mean, all of that coming into play. Think of that in a grander scale. How complex is it going to get before it breaks? Will it break? Will it keep going? You've mentioned, waking up one to wake up all, that sort of thing. But yet I don't think that it can be this big top-down revelation as to what it's all about, because I think that's too grandiose. That's too revelation-like, that it's not going to be that's not a helpful thing. I think it has to come out of, like, the question is someone at some university or some scientific place who just has an interest in our show and just likes hearing us bullshit about this stuff and talk about it and throw ideas around, and some of the guests we have, etc. Are they going to listen to this and go, huh? And then be inspired, not taking literally what I've said, but maybe being inspired by some tandem thought that's then going to lead to something else that's better, or it makes a discovery of something. Like, I don't know if that's how it works, but I get the feeling it's got to be this, like, you can't be sure if it's true or not. Like, there's that real evasiveness about it, which is why I gave the disclaimer, this comes from this. So can we fully trust it? I don't know. But either way, I think whatever it would impart onto you, or whatever its reason is for being here, also has to be in a very subtle and open-ended thing. Because the quick answer to all of this is that I'm lying. As absurd a thought as that is to me, that's easily what someone could say. Well, he's just making it up.
Well, I told Banal about this conversation, and
Yeah.
and the thing that came to him was, he was just immediately said, he's like, now, granted, I'm drunk, but I don't believe it. He said, I
Right.
just don't believe it. And he's like, I don't know Jeff as well as you do, but he said, it's not even about that. He said, you just think about Indrid Cold. You think about Whitley's The Master of the Keys. He said, it just seems like everybody's got somebody coming to them nowadays
Yeah.
who's giving them all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And, it ends up all being, Valiant Thor crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's valid. But
Absolutely.
but at the same time, as I told him, I mean, we know of people, Susan Kornacki is one, someone else who wants to remain anonymous and doesn't know you and has never listened to the show,
Right.
who had someone come to her. Both of their experiences changed from little gray people to Shroud people.
Yeah.
Both of their experiences changed from some sort of authoritarian fear scenario to a sit-down chat. Now let me explain stuff to you,
Right.
as if it's a two-way conversation, but it's not really.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can't ignore that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, maybe there is something fundamentally changed here.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, the difference is, what's the information that you're getting?
Yeah.
You know, is the information good or is it nonsense? And,
Right.
you know, like the contactee movement stuff is just nonsense. I come from Venus. I want to give you love, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not hearing any of that.
No. I mean,
Now, can
if
you
nothing
trust
else,
it?
it's
I mean, or does
thought-provoking. I mean,
it's thought provoking? But I mean, is it on par? I don't know. Now Indrid Cold is a whole other type of thing, right?
Mhm.
It's not a fair comparison to contactees necessarily, but I mean, does this even fit into that type of thing?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can say that if it makes anybody feel any better about it, I mean, it certainly doesn't. If somebody were to come up to us at a conference and go, Jeff, I think that's really fascinating, but I just don't buy it. You know, I think you're dreaming, or I think you're this or that. I would say it's okay. It's cool. You know, um, I get defensive about my earlier stuff because it's so palpably, you know, it's been with me for so many years. You're not going to change my mind about it. And skeptical people are fine as long as they ask respectful questions. I never mind that at all. Um, I can't explain this guy. I can't. I have no idea or reason for why the experience for me changed. I mean, I don't know. It's better. It's better. It's better than little weirdos and you know,
Well,
and
it's even
flying
changed you. I
saucers.
mean, here's the other thing: is that people notice it in your voice. You know,
Yeah,
it has made you more relaxed in some weird way,
yeah,
and I think
yeah.
even more so right after you've had some sort of experience with the guy, some sort of chat.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You're like, it's like somebody's rubbed Jeff's little belly, and now he's
yeah,
he's
yeah,
satiated for a while.
yeah, yeah. It does have that effect. But I have to be honest. I mean, and I know a lot of people say this and don't really mean it. I really do mean this. If I were on the other side of the mic, I wouldn't buy this. Like, I would have a really hard time swallowing it. I really, really, really would. I would have a very hard time. I wouldn't say, you know, the guy's a nut, but I would say, man, I got a really hard time swallowing this because it's too much, you know? I mean, I look at Whitley and the key and that whole thing, and I go, I just don't know. I got a real hard time with it. And it's not that I don't believe him, it's just something isn't sitting right, you know? And I could very much see where people would say, this doesn't sit right with me. This is not, this is, but the only thing I can tell you is it is what it is. And I can't sugarcoat it or make it more palatable, you know?
This is the thing that made Whitley's key thing incredible to me. Is in, I don't remember if it's in the new edition, but certainly in the original edition. I mean, he says at the end, I think it's at the afterword, not the foreword. Look, I'm a better writer than this. This looks like bad dialogue. So I think, you know, he would agree with you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. This doesn't, in some weird way, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't,
No.
or
Doesn't.
you can understand somebody going, you know, I don't buy that.
Yep.
Because there's almost a sense of, well, I don't buy it either, and I'm the one telling you this.
Right. Yeah. Well, and
And
I said
even saying, you know, hey, Anne, don't let me tell you this was a dream.
right.
You know, make
Right.
sure that I remember that this actually happened, because there's gonna come a time when I'm gonna want to tell you this didn't happen.
Right.
I mean, do you get that sense at all from your experiences?
I will tell you one thing about me that is, to be honest with you, is primarily the reason that I wanted to start writing a book, even if I never published it, even if I just wrote it for me, is not only because there are a lot of little things that happen. You know, we've talked about the black spheres in the past couple of weeks. We've talked about this guy in the past couple of weeks. I had some very weird shit while I was sick, and I wasn't taking any codeine or any sort of, you know, liquored up cough syrup. I saw some very weird shit when I was here alone at the house that I haven't even talked about because it's probably not even worth mentioning. But I have to think about this stuff, but yet I've still got a family to support and I've still got a job to do at work. I still have a work to do at home in my you know side tandem job, and you know, and then I've still got a wife, you know, to take care of, and I got holiday presents to come. Like, that's why I say to you, how do you remember all this shit? I'm glad I have you there to throw this shit out as it happens, because in a week, I remember the generic box, but I can't remember everything, every little item that's inside. And I have started writing down again, and this really great journal that Lisa bought me. I've been writing down some of this stuff just so I don't forget it. But yeah, it's not that I feel that it was a dream. I very much remember. I remember how it ended. I remember going back up to bed. I remember where I put the pieces of paper, all of that. No problem. I didn't wake up in the morning and look at my pants laying on the floor in the bedroom and go, are those Post-it notes going to be in that back pocket? Like, it wasn't like that. I knew they were in there. And so when I reached in, it wasn't a big surprise. I got no good answer for it. All I can say is that I'll tell you whatever I remember to the best of my memory. But there is this part that it seems to pass from you. As I get older, it's a lot more so. Not only because it's more sporadic, but because I guess there's just more in life. You've got, life is big, man. Life is big, and you got a lot of shit to do. And sometimes you can't always remember the ultra fine details, and because I've called you mornings going to work on the phone and talked for half an hour until I'm literally sitting at my desk. From the time I pull out of the driveway until I'm sitting at my desk at work, I'm like, all right, well, I got to go. And I've laid out the whole night for you, like what happened, what did he say, what did I see, blah, blah, blah. And that's for no other reason than I know that you'll hold on to the finer details that I'm probably going to not remember down the line. But I mean, the really important stuff I hold on to. So I guess the answer to, am I gonna have that feeling of disassociation from it to make me think maybe it was a dream or something? I don't see that happening.
One thing that, of course, struck me is Teokas and Ghost Horse and the indigenous mind that says everything is metaphors within metaphors within metaphors. It is, in fact, fractal.
Right.
They think fractally.
Yeah.
So now knowing that, if you go back and listen to some of the things Teokasin says, do you think you'll have a better handle on it?
I might, yeah.
I mean, I wonder if everyone will. Because I remember, when he first came on Culture Contact, there was a lot of resistance. Oh, Indians, they talk in circular logic, and he's just, doing X, Y, and Z, and all this sort of nonsense that I was just like, where are these people coming from? How do they not understand what the hell's coming out of this guy's mouth?
Right.
But maybe we just need it put in terms that we understand, it's fractal language, fractal existence.
Yeah, maybe so. I seem to remember somewhere that I heard something asked about from Jacques Vallée, or I'd read in one of his books something about fractal beings, and I don't remember what book it was or what was said about it, but now I'm dying to find out. So I ordered 2 books today, and they should be here, I guess, next week. So I'll comb through them and see if I can find out what that was about. But fractal beings, that would be a good title, I guess. I'll tell you the God's honest truth. I'm unsure about this. I mean, it's really interesting and it's super thought provoking and it seems to fit in so many different places. But I wonder, are we taking the Marjorie Fish map and we're trying to overlay it on top of the stars and make a pattern? I think there's something here, but I know that for as long as I've been in this stuff and as long as I've experienced stuff, that in as much as Teokas everything is a metaphor within a metaphor within a metaphor, everything in this to me has been a ruse inside of a ruse inside of a ruse. And it's all to walk you to the next step or guide you in a certain direction that is going to lead to more questions. But I guess if that's the path that you're walking, and I guess if this is another push, okay, that's fine then. Maybe you don't call it a ruse. Maybe you just call it guidance at that point, But everything seems to hold a certain amount of promise for a time, and then all of a sudden you learn something else, and that doesn't work. But the other something else that you learn.
That's called learning, though.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The other thing that you learn is then what you walk on with, I mean, how far can you take this? I don't I don't know. I mean, I've been reading about it every day on the net and trying to watch more documentaries about it and all of that. But there's a lot to it, and it's mind-blowingly interesting. It is. I mean, go back, folks, and look at those images again. I mean, if you had a computer capable of doing it, you could zoom into that fractal for the rest of your lives and never see the end of it. There is no end. It just keeps going. It keeps complicating itself and recontextualizing itself to repeat that same pattern over and over and over. And it may take on many different mutations of the original outward image that you see, but ultimately what you're going to get is that same repeating thing. And I get the sense that that is how this reality is working, And I find it really fascinating that these amazing and beautiful, if anybody out there has ever worked with the there's a plugin for Photoshop. It's called Kai's Photo Tools. I think it was number 5 as a Fractal Explorer in it. That's what I made some of these images with. And there's another one there. They're called Fractal Flames, and these are much more free and sometimes much more complex looking shapes, but they're not hard edged. They are really random. You can control very subtly some different numbers that go into the input of what you end up with, but you can randomize it. And so often at my work, I've got this nice, beautiful, what is 56 or 60-inch monitor, and I'll blow this thing up full screen, and I will just randomize a fractal over and over and over. And it is mind-blowing to me that sometimes you get a thing that looks like a spirograph went insane, and you'll click the button, and the next thing that comes up looks precisely like a leaf with a stem and veins and segmented leaf, segmented parts of the leaf, jagged edge like a rose's leaf. You'll hit the button again, and again, the spirograph has gone insane, and yet it'll render itself down into something that looks like a butterfly or a dragonfly or a bird. And I don't mean what sort of looks like a bird. It looks like a bird. I mean, this is the stuff of nature. They always said if there was an equation to explain everything, it would be probably very short. And incidentally, fractal geometry uses very short equations, very simple, short things. And so when he says, everything that everyone's looking for, from the artist to the scientist, is there, I believe that.
Well, I think this leads nicely into my last sort of insight, or I guess maybe possibility, let's say, which is metaphor within metaphor within metaphor, systems within systems within systems, the leaf and the fractal and the leaf. Something I talked to you about is pollination. How the hell did we get here? Well, we see this ancient alien business on TV. What happens is these meteors and these asteroids and space rocks act as pollinators for planets that can handle it. What if it's that simple? So that they crash here with microbes on it, organisms, that either grow into things or mutate organisms that are already here into a different variation on the organism. What if that's what we are? And that the sort of proof in that pudding is that therefore there would be multiple planets out in the universe that would have various mutations of this same type of consciousness that we call human consciousness, which is why we can all speak the same language with these beings in shamanic journeys, in alien abductions, in any of that. Because we're all permutations of each other, and we're all living in planets being pelted with pollinating rocks.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking about, whales on one side of the world can communicate with whales on the other side, and they're not really sure how they hear each other and all that. What if that's even a fractal thing, a system within a system within a system? What if there's some genetic link that we have that creates a psychic link, or something that we don't have a real word for, that we're just going to put psychic on there for, with all of these other beings out there in the universe? We're all genetically linked, and so that's why when we communicate with them, when you take the ayahuasca brew, the shroom trip, you're often greeted by something that is happy to see you, or you're greeted by something that is expecting you and is like, okay, come here, you got to learn this thing. They're expecting you because they are you. They're permutations of you, and they're all talking with each other, and they're all expecting you.
Right.
And that also would explain why even in the darkest abduction scenario, you've got this sense of family, or this sense of I chose to be here, or somehow I know these people even though I don't know them.
Yeah.
All of that stuff that, of course, in the sort of fear-driven abduction lit will tell you, you're being manipulated in some way to feel that.
Right.
So that you're ignoring what's really happening, which is this doctor procedure. But what if that's just not true?
Right.
What if the doctor procedure is a cultural contamination or whatever, or is something that's actually being done, but the feeling isn't from that. The feeling is that we are, in fact, all genetically linked.
Yeah.
And in fact, that would even make sense of aliens coming here and doing genetic tampering or whatever.
Yeah.
How could they possibly do that? Well, because they're us in some mutated way. I mean, that to me makes sense. And it even makes sense to me. I mean, it all makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, it all seems like it's possible. And what we're describing are the sort of the physics and the physicality of oneness, the mechanical sort of version of oneness. But this is just how it plays out, through time and space.
Yeah.
And that's what we're witnessing.
What's kind of interesting to me is looking at, again, a fractal pattern of some sort. You have this repetitive thing going on, and I don't know how everybody else kind of interprets it in their own mind, but I look at the ones that are big. When you're looking at the original fractal, just say you're looking at the Mandelbrot fractal, and you see the big shape, here it is, and you look at that and you zoom in and you see, again, the big shape repeated microcosmically on the edge of this thing all the way around. And then all these tendrils are actually all the same repetitive thing. When I look at the big picture of that, the whole Mandelbrot fractal, I look at that and I go, that's old. As I go down and I see these new ones, as I'm getting deeper and deeper, I see them as being newer. Now I wonder if, again, we're in a fractal, or we're a particle in a fractal, I should say. Could it be that, and I'm not a big believer in psychics, but there's interesting things that come out of psychical research. If what is going on in segment A of this fractal down to segment, Y, if segment Y is where we are and segment A is the past of the same thing, which is kind of perhaps a bit mutated, perhaps not, but do people in our little corner of fractal world have an innate ability to look up into those other levels that are older and see what has happened, but it's our future? So they're looking at the past and going, this is what happened. Could this explain why some psychic predictions are right and some are not right? And yet this person has shown every indication of having some sort of distinct ability to predict future events or to know things about people they couldn't know. And yet some people, they're dead on, and others, it just doesn't happen. They could be right 10 times with predictions of future events, and yet they can't get a lottery number. It's not that specific, because there are going to be mutations between each kind of version of that fractal pattern that comes down the loop. But I wonder, do people have the ability to look, at the older fractal pattern, not realizing that's what it is, but they see it as the future. But what they're actually doing is they're looking into the past of a parallel universe and seeing this unfold. And so they know what's about to transpire because it transpired on the other spire. Is that what that is? And we're just not realizing it, or that's not, we're looking, again, we're looking with the microscope, and we're not stepping back, in such a grandiose way to see what could be the bigger picture of all of it.
Man. Well, this is a lot to process, even as we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's too much.
So maybe we should call it a night. I just have one more question for you, which is
Sure.
that when I originally was visualizing what you were saying, you've got the horizontal plane of sort of a string of mirror Earths, and then out from that, you've got this sort of vertical plane of things looking at that, and they're all us.
Right.
In some sense, they're all us, even if the physicality of them looks different. It's all us. And that, to me, to think of it that way, to think of the infinity of that, to just visualize it, is almost meditative. It almost quiets the mind. It's pretty amazing. But you had told me that you'd been feeling depressed thinking about this stuff lately. What do you think the difference is? Why are you depressed? I'm exhilarated. You're depressed. What's going on?
Well, I'm not depressed anymore. I mean, first I was frustrated because I couldn't get my head around it. And then I started having these little inspired thoughts that came out of it, like the psychic thought and the alien thing and nature's things. I mean, thinking about nature and how nature works and how it's building off of what it's already accomplished, et cetera, et cetera. It all is very fractal. It's all repetitive. But I think on some level, you wonder, is deja vu, we mentioned deja vu earlier. Is deja vu you actually having this spontaneous ripple effect from a parallel universe where something has already happened? Finding out where's the source, if everything is the echo of eternity that spindles down the fractal. If that's what it is, and where's the source? The question is, are we the source? And the answer is likely not. We're just another incarnation of something that has already happened. I don't know. I mean, the question comes for me is, is everything laid out? Is it all laid out? Is it going to mutate in some way? Is something going to happen? Or is everything already done and we're just doing it over and over and over? I don't know. I mean, this even makes sense to me in a spiritual sense, when people talk about, I don't know. I don't know what all the religious beliefs believe, but I know I've heard of a belief system that's like, no, again. You live your life, you die. Nope, again. Nope, again. Nope, again. And you're going to keep going until you change something or you learn something. And so this even goes as far to me as in our relationship to here to where we go when this is all over. Do we just go to the next birthing fractal pattern below and do this all again until we get it right? Like, is that what this is too? Is that is this even extend to a spiritual existence? Does that even work?
Or is that even? I mean, this gets back to my sort of reincarnation thing that I talked about on either this or the live show, which is that vision of what life and death is another illusion, and it's not as though you're dying and then you have to restart everything over again. It's that one eye opens and the other closes, and that's what death is.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things are happening simultaneously. It's just that you're only aware of one at a time.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And so if you can step out of that, which would be, like the oneness experience, you step out of that and then you experience all of that in one timeless moment.
Right.
Now, does that change something? I'll let you know when I die. I don't know. But, it's interesting, just going back to deja vu for a second. Could it be that what deja vu is where these two sort of parallel versions of ourselves, they're similar. They can't be exactly the same, but like you were saying with the psychic thing, there must be enough about them that's exactly the same to predict some things, but not others.
Right.
So what if that's what deja vu is that connective point where things agree in these parallel universes?
Yeah, well,
and then it echoes, and then you feel the echo. The echo is the agreement. That's where everything lines up
right
on that instance,
Yeah, yeah. Is it fractal patterns moving through each other? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to converge and become something else.
No. But it's just like, I mean, it would be like if you just picture two circles with black ink dots on them rolling.
Right.
Eventually those ink dots are going to line up.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Then it keeps on rolling.
Right. Yeah. And it'll line up again,
Yeah.
but it's not going to happen for a while. I mean, it's sporadic. It's not constant. Therefore, science immediately goes, well, that can't, because what's true today is true tomorrow. That sort of hard-nosed thinking just doesn't work when you're talking about something like this, where you're dealing in randomness and, but yet chaotic order, which, has become another fascination of mine lately. And I even thought about, I've tossed around stuff about, George's anti-structure and all the focus of intent stuff and all of that. And all of that, throwing all of that into this in some way, shape, or form it's interesting shit to ponder. And we've done a hell of a lot of pondering about it. But other than that, I don't know what to do with it. It's certainly not an answer to me. I mean, for me, at least since this has happened, since I've been reading this, and I've read it every day practically, and I've thought about it continuously since then, to the point where, I was getting frustrated. That was the source, kind of the depression, was just kind of like, Jesus, stop, just live and do something, eat your steak and be happy and shut up. But yet, I mean, here's one from, 2 nights ago. I mean, I go to bed and the coughing doesn't start. I mean, I feel immeasurably better than I did, say, Sunday night, because I had a fever and everything. I don't have that anymore. I've been going back to work and all of that. And I am immeasurably rested. You have no idea how good I feel in that sense. But at night, I go to climb in bed, and that's when the coughing starts, because late night it gets kicked up. And I don't like taking anything, because I don't like, I don't know, I just, I don't like taking medicine. I never have. But I get into bed the other night. It's like 3 a.m, and I can't sleep because I'm coughing. And I go downstairs, and I get the little squirt bottle of Chloraseptic, and I spray a couple shots in my mouth, and I swallow it, and the coughing will stop. And I go upstairs, and I lay down. I close my eyes, and immediately I start having, out of the blackness of I've talked to you about closing your eyes and seeing expanse. Immediately out of the expanse starts coming weird looking machinery and patterns and all matter of weird things. And I'm just like, well, let's go with this for a while, because it seemed very non-threatening. All I had to do was open my eyes, and the night light is on, and it goes away. And when I said to myself, okay, let's just go with this, I didn't say it out loud, I just thought it. I got a very distinct male voice in my head that very evidently was not me, that said, now let me show you this. And then it stopped. So what was that? I mean, one of the weird things that was happening while I was sick. And I wasn't overly fevered or anything like that, but I heard this voice, and I was not sleeping. That was for damn sure, because I was every 2 seconds. And, let me show you this. And boom, it all just stops. Everything went to absolute black. And I was like, huh. So I went back downstairs to get another shot of Chloraseptic before I, could go to sleep again. What answer do you have for that? How does that apply to any of this? What is, it's like, since you have this that's kind of been laid in your lap, now you're trying to see this across the board. And I'm constantly trying to resist myself or pull myself back to go, stop trying to apply everything to this, because you don't know what this means yet. You're not grasping this as fully as you should. So, pull back from it and just go on. But that does happen. I mean, psychology dictates that when you have an extraordinary experience like this and something is kind of laid in your lap, that you're going to try to make more out of it. And I've constantly tried not to make more out of it, but just to kind of riff off of it, which I think by and large is what we're supposed to be doing.
It's a new toy.
Everything is a toy. Yeah.
It's a new mind toy, and you want to play with it until you run it into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, run that mule till it's done. And, and so I hope people have enjoyed this. I mean, I hope people, this is really the first thing I've really gone into depth about with this guy. So I hope that, somebody got something out of it. I really do. And I hope we can get Tracy on the live show this weekend, maybe to tell me if I was right. Like, was there a reason she was like, I get the distinct feeling there was like she needed to hear that for some reason. And I don't know why, but that's the feeling I get. So we'll see if I'm right or not.
Well, maybe we should leave it there. I guess I just want to leave everyone just with, go back to the thought food of metaphors within metaphors. And even, I've talked about like the internet is really an unconscious expression of our want for oneness, blah, blah. And maybe similarly, when we see things like harmonic convergence or group prayer or, let's do all this stuff as a group to form some sort of one coherent vibratory response, all that stuff that never seems to work. Maybe that's all metaphor for, what happens if all of the parallel us's wake up to this? What happens if you in all of these other worlds wake up to this? To me, that would be fascinating to know. Like, is that what this is? I mean, do you have to have fractal possibilities, forever, or do they all become one thing and then it becomes like a string?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
String on a guitar,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, is that what harmony is? But we don't know that, and so we keep looking for harmony in other things. That we try to produce harmony in other ways, and that's actually we can't do it here in this world. We have to do it along the rope of all worlds.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be...
Everything else is pacification.
So I don't know, something to think about. Anywho.
It's like Wavy Gravy said, we're all trying to shake hands with ourselves. Love that Wavy Gravy, I do.
Yes, and Cherry Garcia.
We're trying to get Wavy Gravy on the show. I'm telling you, we got to get Wavy Gravy on the show.
Let's do it.
I'm telling you.
Send him this episode. I'm sure he'll hop at the chance.
I think he would enjoy it.
Well, Jeff, another fantastic episode. Thank you for sharing all of this.
No problem.
And go rest them their vocal cords.
Yeah, I sure will. I sure will.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
All right. Don't forget to catch up with us this Sunday on Paratopia Live, which is www.blogtalkradio.com/Paratopia. I'm sure we'll have some further musings on all of this, including the one thing we forgot to discuss, which is how this man left. Here's a hint. It was through the wall. Anyway, hopefully I'll get to catch up with my friend Tracy and get her on the show. I don't know that that's going to happen, but either way, it should be a fascinating show. Hope to see you there. 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you in the chat room. Hope some of you call into the show. Either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.